Hello, Internet, and thank you for joining me today. So, third time's the charm, right? I mean, this is my third attempt at trying to record a video on this, and it has been a journey, let me tell you. The first time was actually my fault. I forgot to unmute my mic, so it didn't pick up any of the yapping I did. The second time was because I tried to describe the plot and I went a little cross-eyed and just kept yapping nonstop about things and couldn't keep on track. So here we are trying to do this again, but with a few notes this time. The first one being that the most succinct way to talk about this movie is to say that it's the movie that your single, childless Portland aunt is going to be bitching about for the next several years, probably, because they are going to point to this and say, look, this is what you think if you don't agree with whatever point they were trying to make. And so, obviously, if you couldn't tell, this movie is nothing but political propaganda, but for the right this time. This is actually pretty unique, considering most of the things that I end up watching seem to be political propaganda for the left. Not that I'm revealing my own political biases here, but both movies are garbage. If you want to see me roast a left-wing talking point movie, you can wait for me to finally get around and stop procrastinating on a Bride script. Yes, The Bride from earlier this year is going to be a video that I make, and I'm trying not to make it. So we'll just see how that goes towards the end of the year here. Anyway, going on to Citizen Vigilante, let me just jump into it by saying that this movie's not good in basically any... Okay, so the plot. The plot of this is that there is a vigilante called Citizen Vigilante, because apparently we can't have originality in our propaganda pieces. And he's been going around taking out all of the bad guys that are doing bad things and the judges that let the bad people get away with those bad things. We are told this very bluntly by a newscaster that is supposed to be some kind of straw man for like the BBC or MSNBC or something like that. I'm not 100% sure, because this is a film that is inspired a lot by the goings-on right now in Germany and the EU, of which I'm not terribly familiar with what they report the news on in the EU. So we go from there, and we just get basically a series of scenes where he tracks down somebody who did something bad. He, does what he does vigilante style, and then we move on. We don't get a whole lot of character from anybody, but we do get some perspective on the main character, Armie Hammer, who plays our Citizen Vigilante, whose real name I don't remember, but we're just going to call him Armie Hammer, because I'm not going to say Citizen Vigilante 24 times. Regardless, the antagonist, or protagonist, depending on what political perspective you come at this movie from, is an Interpol agent who comes to put a stop to the shenanigans of Armie Hammer and bring him to, an actual court with actual laws and an actual judge that can do, something that's by the law. And long story short, that never happens, unfortunately. Armie Hammer gets to keep doing things that are very vigilante, and it tries to be a revenge story, but there's no personal investment from Armie Hammer. We're told that he was in the military, which apparently just explains that he knows all of this. We're not given a rank or any kind of special training knowledge. He knows how to be John Wick out of the box. Except, this is John Wick from Temu, so you get what you get. Anyhow, let me just go right in and say that the real reason that this movie was never going to work goes all the way back to the director, writer, and I guess producer. I'm not 100% sure if he produced it, but whatever. Uwe Ball. Uwe Ball is, it suddenly dawns on me that I don't know if I'm saying his name right, and then it dawns on me again that I don't really care. So, Uwe Ball, which I will now refer to as Fuckface. Fuckface has directed and produced a lot of movies that are just bad all across the board. I'd compare him to Neil Breen, only Neil Breen brings a passion to his projects that Fuckface doesn't do. All right. And so Fuckface's whole like business model here is that he's going to produce the cheapest movies he can as awfully as he can so that he can qualify for some kind of tax incentive in Germany, or at least that's what I've heard. I should definitely preface that because I'm not a reporter. I have done very little research into this man except to watch the movies he's making, and so that sounds a lot better than my initial thought, which is this is a drug front because every movie he makes is awful, and he was really famous for making bad video game movies, specifically House of the Dead, Alone in the Dark, and Blood Rain. And they made like 4 of the Blood Rain movies, or like 3.5. I don't know that the 4th one ever got made, but I've only seen House of the Dead, Alone in the Dark, and Blood Rain, and that was enough to say, okay, this guy's just universally shit. So I don't feel like I need to watch the rest of his catalog. And after watching this, I can rest assured that that was the right call, because the biggest problem that he has is that he doesn't understand like story structure or characterization. To kind of demonstrate that, I recently popped out a video, I don't remember if it was my last one or the one before that, about Scary Movie. And I called it a series of vignettes or SNL skits that aren't connected by any kind of connecting story. It's the same thing here. You get some kind of like Republican style revenge porn scene about like criminals or something, just generically, and Armie Hammer is going to say something generically badass or something like that, and then you just move on to the next scene, which doesn't really connect. It connects more than it did in Scary Movie, but it doesn't follow like 1-to-1, like A plus B. We go from like A to like 7. And I mean, they're within the same hexadecimal code, but you're not sure what happened in between the two, and it doesn't really seem to be the point, because we're only there to see Armie Hammer do supposedly badass things. Aside from that, he also doesn't understand how to build a character. We get approximately one scene where Armie Hammer goes and talks to somebody and vomits a whole bunch of exposition about how he didn't know his dad that well, he's got daddy issues, he was in the army, just generic army, apparently. But we also get in that scene a glimpse into who he is as a person, because he goes on and drones about how he's a landlord, like he's the head of some big corporation that owns a whole bunch of buildings, and he's supposed to collect rent. And they're not getting 10%. They're only getting 90% of the rent, which is like millions and millions of euros, because again, Europe. But I digress. He's getting millions and millions of euros every month, but then doesn't think that's enough. He is pissed because he's losing 10%, right? And it's like, how much money do you need, dude? Like, especially when you put it this way, like I can almost understand from like a business standpoint, like 10% of your business is, 10% of your business. I get that. I'm sympathetic to this. But the way you say it is, oh, well, I'm losing 10%. I need to go out, and he doesn't outright say that he's going to go out and murder poor people for not paying their rent. but he really heavily alludes to it. And that's not something you want from the protagonist character. Like, you want to like this guy, right? Or you want me to like him, but he's such an unlikable douche the entire time. Which, God bless Army Hammer, because he's really trying. Like, he throws on a voice. He tries to do, like, Blue Steel from Zoolander at the camera. And that almost made it so bad that it's good. Like, if that was it, that'd be fine. But there is a scene at the end. Actually, let me back up. There's a scene towards the end where he kidnaps a activist judge that he deems to have committed the cardinal sin of letting people off the hook, which supposedly they did some heinous crimes, whatever, what have you. I don't really know about that. Like, whenever I try to look at these things, I can only, like, look at it from a very logical standpoint of, like, okay, so was there something else that was going on? Some information that I'm not privy to. But Army Hammer doesn't think that way. He's like, no. The girl said that this happened to her, so it happened, right? And they don't really provide enough context for the case for me to feel one way or the other about it. And so what's upsetting to me is that he's taking this judge out, right? And he's trying to explain a point about how people are basically sheeple. And he's driving a car. He veers into the opposite lane. And apparently there were a bunch of nitro crates in the oncoming car because the car veers off the road, potentially carrying, a family of 4. And it explodes and everyone inside dies a fiery death. And he just uses that as, like, proof of, like, look how dumb people are. You're supposed to be responsible for society, Mr. Judge Man. But it's like, dude, you just literally killed somebody. You don't know how many people were in that car, what their situation was. And you just keep driving. And we're supposed to believe that you're doing the right thing. And there's also the scene that is in all the advertising. I just played the trailers over this video a second ago, but where he's holding, like, these 2 big old guns in a metal box, and he's just gunning down police officers. And I get the feeling that Fuckface wants me to think that this is a really cool shot. He thinks that this is badass because it's guns and Army Hammer's doing his deep voice and doing Blue Steel at the camera, but, like, I just can't help but think, aren't these police officers, like, people with potentially families and, like, other shit going on in their lives? Like, maybe one of those dudes was, like, a volunteer that cleaned up the park, and now the park's gonna be all dirty, and some kid's gonna get stabbed with a heroin needle because no one cleaned up the park. All because Army Hammer decided to exact vigilante justice upon this cop that had nothing to do with anything he's bitching about. So, like, I don't think Uwe Ball put this much thought into it, so I don't know why I am, but this is where my head goes, right? Like, this is why Fuckface can't make good movies, and why they can't be funny bad movies, because they're depressing to me. I get sad thinking about the heroin needle inside that kid's leg, and I just can't move past that. But anyway, don't be fooled by anybody saying that this movie is, gonna own the libs or whatever. Like, it's really not. It's not saying what Fuckface wants it to say. It's a hilarious performance from Army Hammer, but it's not saying anything else, man. I didn't get that. I don't think you'll get that from this. This movie's bad from top to bottom. It's, man, this was a rough one to get through, and I'm very sad that I had to talk about it for as long as I did. here on my third recording. Anyway, if you liked this rambling video, show me by leaving a like and subscribe if you haven't subscribed. I'm going to do a video I actually want to do hopefully by the end of this week, but it's looking grim right now with my schedule. So until that time, sayonara, bitches. Also, this movie says the word woke. I have not seen anything that cringy in such a long time, and I'm exhausted by it. I don't use the word woke in my everyday life or in my videos because it does not explain what I want it to explain. But this movie uses the word woke many times, and I hated it. All right, see ya.